everybody, my name is Jennilee Austria-Bonafacio and I am the author of Reuniting with Strangers. On top of that, I've been in the settlement industry in Canada for a long time. Currently, I'm at Together Project as the Communications and Program Outreach Specialist. But before I tell you about what I'm doing now, I'd like to tell you about my journey through settlement and how this inspired me to become an author. I came to Toronto to study immigration and settlement studies at Toronto Metropolitan University. Following that, I got my absolute dream job, which was as a school settlement worker in North York and Etobicoke. Because I'm Filipino, I was put in schools with some very high Filipino populations. And when I was doing that, I realized things are not the same when we're looking at the newcomer populations. So for instance, I grew up in Sarnia. In Sarnia, oh my goodness, in the 80s, the 90s, it was just part of this belief that I had that Filipinos did really well. And if it was in music, in academics, in sports, it was just one of those things that I took for granted. Our fathers oftentimes worked in the chemical plants in Sarnia, and those were 9-to-5 jobs. Our moms were working as well, oftentimes in healthcare. Some of them were stay-at-home moms. And the thing was that I thought this was normal. And then when I moved to Toronto, and I started working with newcomers in settlement, I realized this is not normal at all. We were seeing really high rates of chronic disengagement with the youth, a lot of dropouts, a lot of issues with parents not being able to talk to their kids, not being able to connect. And it was this situation that really boggled my mind because I thought, this is not what I was coming from. So why is it so different here? I realized that what I was seeing in those 3 schools had to be happening in other schools as well, maybe even across Canada. So from there, I became a researcher with the York Centre for Asian Research. One of the things that we found was that we had a lack of role models. I thought, okay, how are we able to give the youth someone to look up to? Also, how are we able to give the youth leadership positions and shine a spotlight on our community as well so that other people can realize what we're going through? Following that, I became a journalist. And then the thing is that when you become a journalist with the ethnic press, I was working with a Filipino newspaper, you get to meet a lot of leaders in different capacities in the community. And on top of that, I got sent to places like Hawaii to see the Filipino youth programs that already existed and to think about what can we do to bring those kind of programs to Canada. After that, I became a school board consultant. So I started something called Filipino Talks, where I would go around to different schools and run different programs with the teachers and with the students. Filipino Talks basically means that I am the bridge between educators and Filipino newcomer families. A lot of times teachers don't realize what they don't know, and it's not their fault. The teachers are very busy, so someone needs to kind of break down what's happening in the school, show them what the situation is like, and then give them a lot of solutions so that way we're able to move forward. So, working with refugee newcomers by day, working with Filipino newcomers by night and weekends, I realized that there are a lot of things that the average Canadian doesn't know. For instance, when we talk about Filipinos and the issue of the caregiver program, the main difference between who I grew up with in Sarnia versus Filipino newcomers here in Toronto was the caregiver program. A lot of the Filipino students I was meeting who were coming to Canada as newcomers had been separated from their moms for a number of years. Because the caregiver program means that the mom usually comes first and then sponsors the kids and the spouse later. So let me show you now a graph. I want you to see that these are statistics that I got from 1,200 Filipino Talk students. And you'll notice here that when we ask them, how long were you separated from your mom? The graph peaks at 8 years. Now, these are kids in high school, so can you imagine being 15 years old and you haven't seen your mom since you were 7? That's a really long time, right? And maybe she had come to the Philippines a couple times to visit you, but you haven't lived with her since you were in like the 2nd grade. When we're looking at graphs like this, you can also see that it goes up to 20 years of separation. Now for those kids, it's like they were born and then mom just left immediately, right? There's no relationship whatsoever. When we think about the high school students who are coming to Canada, they're dealing with a new country and a new language and a new school, a new home, and on top of that, a new parent. That's a lot of things, right? On top of being a teenager, which is already difficult, as you all know. I know some of you might be thinking, well, those are moms, what about the dads? So let me show you another graph. In this one, you're going to see that separation from fathers peaks at 1 year or less. Now, that's good, right? That means that the fathers were on these short-term contracts, maybe in the Middle East or on a ship. But you'll also notice one other thing, which I will show you in the next graph. Now, this is the exact same information, but with one extra data point. You'll see here, no relationship comes up, right? And look how high it is. The exact same data that you just saw, but with the addition of no relationship. So when we're looking at the students and their parents, right, oftentimes the issue is with boys. Filipino boys seem to be having higher instances of chronic absenteeism, issues with their parents, and I think this is why, right? A lack of fathers in their lives. So when I'm doing Filipino talks, there are a couple things that I do. Step 1 is survey the Filipino newcomer youth. Step 1 is so important because when I go into a school, I realize the students might be different. And who am I to say what they need if I don't know who they are first? So I work with school board staff to figure out what is it that we need to know about their students. How long are you separated from your mom and your dad, of course, but also what's your relationship like with them? Do you work after school? How many hours? What do you want to be in the future? Do you know someone in that job you want in the future? Are they Filipino? Are you in any extracurriculars? What can your school do better for you? I want to know all of these things so that way we can have a really good picture of the youth of that school. So step 2 is run youth programs focused on reunification and role models and school and community involvement. And the reason why is because if we can address these things, everything else will fall into place. Filipinos, we are a collectivist culture. We like to do things together. Also, I run something called Letters to Mama. Letters to Mama is this video that I make with the kids. First, I give them a piece of paper and I tell them, write this letter to your mom. Anything you want to say, it can be in English or in Tagalog, as long as it comes from your heart. It's not going to get sent to her. So be honest. And so usually the letter sounds like this. Dear Mama, I hate you. I hate this school. I hate this country. I hate our house. I want to go home. Usually that's what it says. So then what I say is, okay, students, take that letter, turn it over, and pretend to be your mom. What would she say if she received that letter from you? The kids know what mom wants to say. So they usually write, Dear Anak. Anak means child. We don't have words for son and daughter in Tagalog. So, Dear Anak, dear child, I'm so sorry you feel this way. Everything I've done was for you. I've sacrificed so much for your future, but I see that you don't understand. Let's talk. Let's spend time together. I love you. Love, Mama. And so that way, the kids can see that they're all in the same boat. We can all kind of process this together and hopefully move forward. Another thing that I like to do is talk shows. I love to bring in the students' future role models. So one of the things I ask in the survey is, what do you want to be in the future? And do you know a Filipino in that career? So usually the students will say they want to meet someone in the medical field, like a doctor, an engineer, and then a lawyer, and a teacher, somebody in the arts. And so I'll find a Filipino doctor, teacher, lawyer, engineer, and someone in the arts. The reason why we do a talk show at first is because sometimes newcomers are quite shy, right? Following the talk show, every single role model is placed at a different table. and the kids have to rotate around in small groups. So that way, not only did they meet someone in the career they want in the future, but that person is Filipino, and of course they can connect. The last part of Filipino Talks is talking to the teachers. Teachers don't know what they don't know, right? Oftentimes teachers think that Filipino kids are coming from a place of poverty before they come to Canada. And this is not true because they've been receiving remittance money from their mothers who are here as caregivers. The money that moms have been sending home, every single paycheck has made sure that the kids can go to private school, that they have had house help, that they've always had, nice clothes, the latest gadgets. So when they do come to Canada, it's quite a drop, right, in economic status. Sometimes teachers think that the kids were separated from mom for maybe a year or 2 years. They don't realize it's been 8, 9, 10 years. So someone has to kind of talk to them about this, and then also talk to them about the different ways that we can heal this relationship. For instance, I always tell English teachers, rather than have the kids write their own memoir, why don't you ask the kids to write their mom's memoir? They have to ask their mama, where was she before Canada? Because oftentimes they didn't come straight from the Philippines to Canada. There was another country in between. What was her life like? What kind of jobs was she doing? How much did she miss them? Those are really important things. Now, I really want to tell you about why this book exists, because even though it's a work of fiction, the true story is that when I was a settlement worker in schools in Toronto, there was a teacher I met on my first day in one of the schools. And she said, "Oh, it's too bad you're here now. We really needed you last month. We had a family in crisis. Since then, they have left. We don't know where they went." The mom was a caregiver from the Philippines, and her son was 5 years old, reunited with her, and she didn't realize that he would be nonverbal and also quite violent. At nighttime, he would try to hurt her and hurt himself, and she would resort to this really extreme solution, which was that she would ask people to come over to straitjacket him. And that was the only way he would calm down and finally go to bed. When I was talking to the teacher, I thought, well, I've never heard of this before, straitjacketing a 5-year-old. But let's put that aside for a second. Why is he so mad? And I thought about this for years. There are a lot of reasons why he should be mad. 1, maybe nobody told him he was coming to Canada. 2, maybe he didn't know who mom was. Maybe they didn't really have a relationship. Maybe she had never even video called him before. 3, what if he doesn't speak English and she's only speaking to him in English? 4, did he witness any violence in the home in the Philippines? 5, who took care of him? Did they just drop him off? There are a lot of reasons why he should be mad. And this made me think about my students in Filipino Talks, and as a settlement worker, I thought a lot of the time what the students have said to me was, "Ate," ate means older sister, "Ate, I feel like I have no voice. I feel like nobody ever asked me if I wanted my mom to leave me behind in the Philippines. Nobody asked me if I wanted to come to Canada. Nobody asked me if I see a future in this country. Nobody asked me any of these things. I feel so powerless. I feel so voiceless." And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to write about the impacts of families being separated, reunited in Canada, one thing would be really important, which is to show the power of a child who thinks they are voiceless. So when I was writing this book, I thought, okay, we're going to talk about this boy. I named him Monolith. We're going to talk about Monolith's settlement journey over one winter in Canada. And on top of that, we're going to weave it in and out of other stories, because I thought it has to be a collection of interlinked short stories. For instance, the grandpa who's left behind in the Philippines, and all of his kids have left for Canada, and now he needs a caregiver. Who's going to take care of him now? Let's talk about the guardians who take care of the kids in the Philippines, and then when mom is in Canada and says, "Okay, now I want them to come join me," the guardian says, "You know what? No, I feel like they're mine now. I've raised them since they were babies. You can't have them." Let's talk about the impact on the second generation, like me, right? oftentimes newcomer family members come and the second generation has a hard time welcoming them because there's been this long history of remittances and there is some resentment there. What I wanted people to see was the impact of separation and reunification, not even just in Toronto, but in different parts of the country. You can see here in this map the different places where the book takes place, because honestly, if it just takes place in Toronto, I'm doing myself a disfavor because I was born and raised in Sarnia. So we have to talk about Filipinos outside of the big cities as well. Maraming salamat po. Thank you to Threads Conference for having me. This book is available online and at most bookstores. I hope that you love it.